Welcome Templar gamers to another year and another series of the Assassin's Creed saga. To many it is a FIFA, a COD, a yearly update that Ubisoft churn out each year for Christmas gifts all over the world. And it is to an extent, but a lot more work and effort is involved in these franchises than many believe. Yes, we have had no huge franchise changing aspects outside of Assassin's Creed 3's Seafaring Battle, which basically became the 2013 Black Flag game, and also took us into now-gen machines while also being the base for the grand finale of last gen with Assassin's Creed Rogue, a game that does not hide its base roots well at all. What could have been a digital-only DLC content for say £20–25, this has now become another update, and some will say that this is a waste of time and an insult, but it would have still taken a large team and effort to make this game, just less so from the coding and engine side. But we can thank this game for many things, and one of them is it leaves Unity free to simply be aimed at the specs of the higher and more powerful machines of PC and now-gen consoles, and it is clear that aim is higher from the ground up. This is more than just an evolution, and it is a leap from Black Flag. In this 7th adventure of the Assassin's Creed series, you play Arnaud Dorian, a Frenchman born in Versailles who's out for revenge for the assassination of his adopted father, who is unaware of his base roots in the Templar Order and his real father also being an assassin. The game then sets you off on the journey of revenge within the Templar Order to succeed your aims. The game is set in Paris, which stands testament to the superb architecture and visual style of the game, characters and design, and this is carried over within the game's environment and story style. Being very indicative of the time, it is a very violent era and a very sexual one, and this is very true of the French Revolution at the time, and it's good to see Ubisoft staying true to the themes of the storyline and what they're trying to achieve. The only downside to that is the English accents throughout the entire game.
And if all other plans fail, why not sacrifice yourself for the cause?
You mean a dagger in broad daylight as I'm cut down where I stand?
Which is a shame because it doesn't make that much sense. But let's not dwell on this. The game, or at least the demonstration from Gamescom, has you starting your apprenticeship within the Order with a walkthrough mission that is shown clearly all the way through. The mission involves you having to tail and finally assassinate a fat evil man with bad skin, so therefore clearly deserving of his impending fate. With the violent and turbulent nature of the game offset by the grand beauty of Paris. We have the River Seine running through Paris, we have the grand beauty of the Place de Bastille, amazing overpowering cathedral of the Notre Dame de Paris, with all of this grand beauty being viewable and scalable by your good self. The playthrough is set in this era and we go on our journey having to work through the cathedral to complete our mission. With the game being set in such a rich and detailed time, the game does carry a mature rating, and while the E3 playthrough shows public executions, beheadings and heads on spikes, all very accurate to the period and aggressive nature of the time. Angry mobs hoard the streets fighting with the rich oppressors living in comfort and luxury, while abject poverty reigns on the streets of Paris. Letting them eat cake will certainly not quench their hunger for justice. And this dynamic seems to play throughout the game, with the most impressive crowd and NPC levels seen in a game, with some scenes having over 15,000 on-screen NPCs. This truly makes your interaction more believable and grounded, using the crowd to hide, to survey and even help by storming palaces and homes to create a diversion and aid you in your mission. And these improvements continue with battles and combat. Assassin's Creed had developed you into a dual-wielded sworded version of Jet Li or Donnie Yen, able to kill 20–30 soldiers on your own simply by spamming the attack and block buttons, which has now been replaced with a more controlled and structured timing system. Parry, block and counter are all still present, but now require you to time your attacks in line with your attacker. And here the area changes massively from the previous game. You can see here in the demonstration from Assassin's Creed Black Flag, I can simply run around this whole courtyard, killing every soldier on site without any worry about being spotted, because they're all too stupid to react to me properly, and I just bang the buttons until they're all simply dead. This won't be possible in the new Assassin's Creed due to the fact that the game will not allow you to just spam buttons. You will quickly die and be overpowered, forcing you to play the game in the correct stealth mechanic from its original origins, and as it should be, being an assassin of an order that is supposed to be working under darkness and cover and not running around like a one-man army killing everyone randomly. It is a combat system that's a little similar to how Rise got it correct, with it having to time your attacks and your defense in time with the attacker rather than just spamming the button. And this is something that I'm looking forward to within Assassin's Creed, along with the now additional crouch button, which has so long been absent I can't believe it's never appeared in the game before, allowing you to crouch and hide when needed rather than just run around and have it happen contextually within the game when they decide it needs to happen. And this is a big improvement because it should add to the fact that you feel like an assassin and have the option to crouch and hide when it suits you on the missions that you're in. Unfortunately, it does seem as if it's a little poor in its execution by the fact that crouching behind this wall suddenly makes you invisible in front of these two guys who should have clearly seen you from the distance of where you are from them. But hopefully this is something that may be improved in the AI later on in the game, but I wouldn't hold my breath. The new combat system not only adds a more realistic element to the fighting, but it also forces you to play the game again in a more stealth mechanic. When you get spotted, you will be forced to retreat and hide and bide your time until you can return, rather than simply killing everyone in the room and then just going gung-ho into the mission anyway. And this is far more accurate to how the game should have been many moons ago, and something that I'm very happy to see. Along with improved combat also comes improved manoeuvrability. A new parkour system allows you to ascend and descend with a stylised grace never before seen. The game has always boasted great verticality within its design, but it was always a little stifled and linear. Looking here on Black Flag, you can see that you can only go in basically a 90-degree angle, straight across or straight up. This could then leave you, when you're being chased or running down a street, having to change direction and run up a wall, fall off, miss it or go elsewhere. And sometimes this was frustrating and never felt as fluid and seamless as it always should have done. Now in Assassin's Creed Unity, this seems to have been completely fixed, with you now able to run along streets, along walls, onto tops of canopies, jumping onto bars, pulling yourself up in any direction, be it 90, 80 or a complete diagonal, and a combination thereof. This means that when you're being chased, you can quickly escape fluidly, or if you're chasing somebody else, you can then catch them far quicker, and it makes the whole control system feel more fluid and seamless, just like the combat, and these are valid improvements that needed to happen within the saga. The entire traversal system now seems far more free-flowing and fluid, with changes of direction seeming very swift and light, far more cat than cattle. And now you have something that's also been amiss in all of the previous versions that, again, I cannot believe wasn't there. You can now descend buildings with one button rather than simply jumping on or turning around to grab the ledge below. This again adds far greater scope of movement and verticality, enabling you to drop down from high areas without having to worry where you're going or whereabouts you're going to land. And just like the new crouch option assigned to the triggers, this also has its own dedicated button, allowing you to control it as you need to within the game, now enabling you to descend as eloquently as you normally ascend. This entirely boosted and updated control system can be seen throughout the level design in the game. Whereas on Black Flag you can see easily placed ledges, bars, ropes and everything else designed to run so that your control system was forced along the path preordained within the level design. Now with the rooftop and the traversal system being far more free flowing, they can design the levels a little bit more open, so you now have multiple options to climb, move and run, enabling you to climb diagonally and vertically on your own path. Being aimed at far more powerful hardware, what can we expect? With the welcome improvements to the game design and mechanics, these aren't something that couldn't have been done on the previous generation of machines. Maybe aside the huge NPC counts, which is clearly evident in the crowd scenes you can see in Assassin's Creed Black Flag. But what could not have been done, and something that followers of my channel will know that I bang on about a lot, and that is the seamless loading from cutscene to gameplay, and more importantly, interior and exterior scenes. The transitions that we see in this game are now all done in real time, from cutscene to gameplay, with the handover being seamless. We can run across a rooftop, climb down a building, seamlessly swing into a window, kill two guys and back out the other side. All of these elements is something that was never been present on the previous generation. If we look here on Assassin's Creed Black Flag, running on a next-gen machine, the Xbox One, you can see even going into your cabin on the ship forces a loading time and coming back out again. And this is the kind of example I try to show when I talk about games being made from last gen and the limitations of where the engine starts. There's no reason why Black Flag on PS4, PC and Xbox One couldn't have had seamless loading throughout the entire game. It didn't, because the entire game was built around last gen requirements. Not such a case in Assassin's Creed Unity. Here we get the full power of the machines and the memory space and the speed of loading, and now we can appreciate that by having this dynamic world and not having us drop out of cutscenes and story and interior, taking control away from us and watching a horrible black screen which always forces immersion breaks, and is one of my biggest pet peeves, along with pre-rendered cutscenes. Visually the game is a large step up from Black Flag on PC and now gen machines. Running a physically based renderer like all games will now going forward, you can see the difference it makes on the character design and how lighting affects objects like clothes and fabrics. You can see that the cloak of Arno actually looks like silk, with the light reflecting off of it as he walks through the crowd and turns, giving the anisotropic effect of the light catching the grain and moving up and down the fabric as it would in real life. With these small changes like seamless loading, lighting effects and shading abilities all being relatively small in their own right, all adding up to big differences overall. Another big difference which you can see quite clearly if you look at this game is the animation and physics. If you look at the Black Flag only from last year, you can see the animation when the main character runs on his cloak and cape moving. It looks quite fluid, the animation looks quite smooth. Then compare this to Arno's cape and how he moves, you can see the actual quality of the fabric and the physics are far more realistic. Adding to this, the animation and the intercut blending animation is far advanced. The issue being that even though Black Flag was running on PCs and now-gen machines, the memory limitations were still those of the PS3 and the 360. This is true of any game running across gen, because they cannot spend all that time making separate engines, unless of course development is split across two separate teams. In Black Flag's case that was not true, and that is clearly evident in what you can see here. Along with the smoother animation, the frame rate also appears to be smoother, even though Black Flag had a locked 30 on last gen machines and obviously whatever your machine could muster on a PC, this does appear as smoother. Now this is not achieved using motion blur, which is absent in this game as it has been in all Assassin's Creed games. Now there is rumours of the frame rate being aimed, or at least there is talk of the frame rate being aimed at 60 frames per second. Most likely this will transpire to be an unlocked frame rate with an option to lock it to 30 if this does turn out to be true. Looking at the videos I can't tell because they're all 30, but certainly the frame rate does appear smoother and very variable. Another addition here is the game appears to run some level of tessellation. You can see it on the rooftop tiles here as Arno climbs up, and also runs it on the ground. You can see it around some of the cobblestones and areas. When you do tessellate the ground, you can end up with areas where the characters can clip through the floor. You can see it here on the cobblestones as the NPC's foot clips through the ground as Arno walks towards him. You can also see it from the E3 demonstration when they're fighting in the palace with Arno's foot clipping through the carpet. Tessellation adds additional information to geometric objects within the game. It is housed within a displacement map, which gives the information for height and width of the object so that these can be drawn with additional polygons when needed for the scene. They're most likely used on things like walls and objects to create depth, and this adds additional information and additional detail. It can also be used for pretty much anything else in the game, including characters, objects and volumetrics. The game also contains an impressive lighting engine using global illumination. Now global illumination is basically indirect light sources. With its 24-hour cycle, this will then handle how light is reflected and bounced around streets and the cobblestones when it's sunny, cloudy, nighttime, and this makes everything look far more organic. This is achieved by the textures having far more information contained within them on the composite maps, with basically the light, the radiancy and the luminosity and the roughness being added to the object. This then handles how light reacts with it. So if you've got a velvet top, for example, it does reflect the light the way you would expect, and a stone wall would reflect hardly anything at all and absorb all of the light. And this is effectively how physical-based rendering works. It is far more work for the texture artist to create, but it then allows your world to be far more realistic, allowing the game engine to handle how light would react within a scene, stopping pre-baking and cutting down the amount of work up front to generate these. Along with image-based lighting, there's a lot of changes going forward in lighting aspect, and it is something that I'll do a video on very soon, covering all of the exciting new lighting techniques that are available to us now in this generation and on PC. We still get the standard local and global cube maps being used on window reflection. Having a real-time reflection of yourself in a mirror, or at least the objects behind you, adds that level of realism that should really be standard practice now in these games, and it's a little sad to still see Ubisoft using the same tricks from last gen. With image-based lighting and probes being an option here, a more localized cube map would have helped. But sometimes I've even seen games where the inside of the building is reflecting the outside, like trees and woods. Battlefield 4 suffered heavily from this across all platforms. That said, this is not a witch hunt for Ubisoft, and I'm sure other games will suffer from this. But overall, this is a game that has me excited and looking forward to what will happen when it gets launched in November. Along with the other improvements, they've also fixed one of the big issues that many people suffered, myself included, from Assassin's Creed games. You now no longer have the mission suddenly end if you fail to do one part of it and then resync. You can then have multiple endings to missions. Although it's not yet clear if this only adds to the additional missions and the side missions, with you now having the ability to investigate crimes and murders in the street and even arrest people and put them in prison. This, and along with the cooperative 4-player online aspect of the game, they've added a great deal of scope and certainly see a future in fully immersive online games. The 4-player drop-in drop-out co-op allows you to tailor your character as you see fit and make him look more individual to your own needs. This includes weapons and clothing, but online in the game you'll all be Arno. Again, it's a very similar pattern to Watch Dogs, and we all know how Ubisoft like to share aspects from one of their games to another. That said, Assassin's Creed Unity does look to at least to deliver an additional content and graphical fidelity that is expected of these machines, if it's not something that's pushing the boundaries as far as I would hope. I'll be sure to bring you guys more information as soon as I know more on this game. Please stay tuned for me throughout next week, where I'll be off to the EGX show to get some hands-on time with all of the big games for Christmas and into next year. Expect full-on preview show floor videos from games like The Order 1886, Bloodborne, COD Advanced Warfare, Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition, and many, many more. I'll be getting hands-on with these games and video reviews for you guys to check back on, along with the very interesting developer sessions, and find as much information out as I can. Hopefully some interviews with them while I'm there also. As always, if you enjoyed this or any of my other content, then please hit that sub button. It helps me immensely. Like it if you did, and leave your feedback and thoughts below. You guys and girls take care, and I'll see you next week on a very exciting EGX special with hopefully some great hands-on and first views of games you haven't seen yet. I'll see you on the next one.
We want his bloody head!